Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, we're back here on the Chase Thomas podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee. Everything School HQ. Joining me, Locked On Vols, Volquest's own Eric Cain is here. Eric, good morning, sir. How are you?
Yeah, good morning. I'm doing really well, and excited for a big sports day ahead.
It is a big sports day ahead, and to let the good folks know, we are recording this before Tennessee baseball first pitch against in first game of the series against Alabama and Tuscaloosa tonight, where Tennessee last loss in SEC series was actually in this very place a year ago, their last one. And then Tennessee Wofford tonight. So we're not going to go full clairvoyant here, Eric Cain, to talk about what we think ultimately happened this evening. But spoiler alert, Tennessee won every game. That's what we'll just go ahead and say. That's the vibe we're going to have. Because why not? If we don't know what's going to happen here, why not assume the best case scenario?
You know, it's always tricky when you do that. I do the Porch podcast with I kind of rotate with Charlie Taylor and Xander Seacrest, and typically for those guys, getting it done earlier, my recording with them in the week is better. So we usually do it on a Monday, and Tennessee won 22 straight games at that point in time, dating back to last year. And so at the very end of my segment with Charlie, I kind of said, hey, Tennessee's riding this win streak at the time of this recording. I assume Tennessee's going to beat ETSU, but I don't know. At least I did show my work. I was like, ETSU's a pretty good ball club, so you never know. And it's like you kind of project that way. But I put it at the very end so I could just chop it right off. And what I did last night when I edited that thing together, I chopped it right off. Nobody knew until now.
Goodness gracious. I mean, I was checking the Volquest message boards after that. I mean, some people take it in stride, but still, Tony could lose this game, to Tennessee Tech or ETSU or insert team name here, except Belmont. I feel like they've beaten Belmont 107-4 every time they've played. But I don't know. It's just you drop one, and it's not. And I was just talking to Jack Foster about this, where I don't know if you agree with this, and if you've ever asked Tony about it, Eric, but I don't think these games should count on midweeks because you're already treating it like an experiment. It's kind of, and again, I want to be as respectful as possible here. It's like a JV to varsity situation where you're kind of experimenting. You're playing guys that would not be in the weekend lineup. You're pitching guys who would not be in those spots in the weekend lineups. You're trying to see which arms could potentially help you on SEC weekends. It's just different. The fact that it's treated the same in terms of wins and losses as the weekend games, I don't know. I don't know if it should actually count against Tennessee when they are experimenting and they're treating it so differently.
I never thought about it in the regards of should it count or should it not. Because, Tennessee's not the only one that does it this way. I mean, everybody does it this way, right? Yeah. I mean, FSU lost to, was it Mercer a couple weeks ago?
Yeah.
And, it happens. But it's very much JV in terms of how you do your pitching. Because if Tennessee was trying to go out there and win that game, you would have started Liam Doyle. He would have thrown 6 innings and shoved, right? But that's just not how it works. You start Thomas Crabtree, and then you do this guy, and then this guy, and then this guy, Austin Breedlove, whoever it was. And Tennessee threw 10 guys in that game.
Yeah.
Now, where it is the same is that was pretty much Tennessee's starting lineup, albeit a player here or there. I recognize that.
I was going to say, Ariel started, yeah.
Ariel started, and Dalton Bargo was in the starting lineup. But, he's a guy that plays a lot. But anyway, Tennessee was, I don't have it in front of me, Tennessee was 1 for 12 with runners in scoring position. They were 2 for 14 with 2 outs. Or with runners on. It was awful. So the hitting was gross and atrocious. But again, sometimes that's baseball, right? And you drop a game, and Tennessee dropped a midweek game to Lipscomb last year and won a national championship. Tennessee lost to Tennessee Tech and Boston College in a midweek in 23 and went on to Omaha. It's just how it is. But that's interesting. Never thought about it in terms of should it count, but it is very JV in regards to how you throw it.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the first thing I wanted to ask you about here at the top, Eric, and it's the offense. And I kind of wonder, because coming into the year, I did anticipate a drop-off offensively from what you had at the top. You're just replacing so much production in the top 6. It's just, there's no way around it. Regardless of how good your transfers are, I just think it was unrealistic to expect this offense to be as good as it was a year ago. However, I also thought the rotation and the pitching would be a whole lot better than a year ago. And you pieced together a weekend rotation that won a national championship, and that was awesome. But I did think the upside here with this rotation was just going to be really, really good. The pitching is great. We still have some question marks about some of the, like Ryan Combs. He's got to get back on track. You get Binky back in there. We'll see where he factors in. But, I mean, you have Loy, Snead. You have these guys who can just show up for multiple innings on multiple days for you. And it's just, I mean, you have AJ Russell looming. I mean, there's just a lot. Brandon Arvidsson, it can't really, like, you figure out where to find. Like, there's just options. Like, Tennessee and Frank Anderson are going to figure out the best way to manipulate this weekend rotation and weekend bullpen looks. But I think in terms of offense, like, they have a lot of names. They're still, like, you look up and down the lineup, averages are mostly pretty solid. Power's been there. There is something about the offense, though, that does feel a little off, right, Eric? It doesn't feel like 2023, where it was like, oh, there's real problems. Like, it's not just off. Like, this offense has real problems. Like, you're going to be 5-10 in SEC play. But I do think there are real, I don't want to say concerns, real questions about what this offense is ultimately going to be. Because I think you're fine with Gavin Keelan. You're playing a lot of true freshmen now. Like, that's part of where you're at in SEC play. You're going to be there. Andrew Fisher, you were hoping he was a plug-and-play Billy Amick guy. I don't think he's playing to the level of Billy Amick a year ago. That doesn't mean he can't get there, but he's got to get more consistent here in SEC play. But I don't know. Like, do you have the same kind of questions about the lineup? Because I don't know how good it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's still, in the grand scheme of things, it's a very small sample size, only 21 games. But, I mean, they've cooled. They've certainly cooled. Yeah. I mean, you had Levi Clark that was hitting over 500 and, top 5 in the country. And then he's cooled considerably. Oh, he's cooled all the way down to 423, but he's cooled considerably the last week. But I mean, he's cooled off a little bit. Reese Chapman was on fire to begin the year. He's cooled off a little bit. Andrew Fisher, the average isn't like great, 271, but he's playing a lot better than where he was. I mean, 271 average, but the power's there at 7 home runs and 21 ribbies. So that's what you brought him here for. I mean, Andrew Fisher is not a 300 hitter. That's just not who he is. He's I'm going to hit you 270, and I'm going to hit you 30 bombs at Lindsey Nelson. And it's like, okay, well, at least you're hitting home runs, from now on. So I've been impressed with that. I thought Cannon swinging the bat better of late, but, still the 214 is not great. So, I mean, a lot of it is it's baseball, and it's a long season. But you're still seeing a lot of consistency with Gavin Keelan, with Hunter Inslee. I mean, Hunter Inslee, every time you look up there, he's hitting like 325, 330. It's like, is he really? Like, yeah. He continued. I mean, the other night he had 4 hits. And I thought
he leads them in home runs, right? Doesn't Gavin lead him in home runs right now too?
Yeah, Gavin Keelan leads him in home runs with 10. Yeah, and that's a storyline this weekend with his health because he got banged up a little bit at the end of the game on Tuesday, and that's something to pay attention to big time. If he's not available to play a lot this weekend, man, like there's a lot of options, like in the mound you were talking about. I mean, like. You could put Manny at second, Ariel at shorts. You could put Dean at third. You can go Bargo at third, Manny at second. There's so many different ways you could do it, but guys are gonna have to step up. But back to your point, I mean, the offense, yeah, I mean, there's not a Semo, a Blake Berg, there's not a Kavaris Tears, there's not a Dylan Dreiling. I mean, it's hard to replace those guys, but I think Tennessee's doing a pretty good job so far. What I'm looking for is Levi Clark to get back on track, find some more consistency. What I'm looking for is Cannon Peebles to add a little bit to the bottom of that lineup. What I'm looking for is Dean Curley to avoid the 0 for 5 days, the 0 for 4 days. Go the Maui route until you can kind of tread water. Go 1 for 4 and get that first hit in the 7th inning if you need it. You need to avoid those type of stretches. But yeah, there's some questions. But overall, I still think the offense has been pretty solid. I'd like to see them hit for more extra base hits, not necessarily home runs. But this team last year was so good at doubles because Blake Berg was like one of the national leaders. I like to see that kind of return as we move on to Alabama week.
I think all that's fair. I do kind of wonder because like you brought up, like we just kind of penciled in and Dean would be filling the Semo spot in the leadoff where it's like he's probably going to be your best hitter this year. I don't think he's your best hitter this year, which is a good problem to have. Like Dean's really good, but he's not your best hitter. Behind him, it's probably been Gavin Keelan to this point has been your best hitter. That being said, I do kind of wonder because Jay Abernathy has come on late. Like Jay Abernathy was someone that we and I think you and I talked about it like before the year of like if he had to pick one true freshman to like start and be playing right away, it was Jay Abernathy. That wasn't the case right away, and now he is I think, settled in at left field. He's hitting well. We know what he can do on the base pass. And we assume as a 3-year guy, he's going to eventually move into that leadoff hole. Eventually. But that's a lot of pressure to put on a true freshman. But I do kind of wonder now, and I wonder if you're starting to think, like, how many more weekend series where he hits pretty well at the bottom of the order. I mean, we're both Braves guys. It's like kind of the Michael Harris thing where it kind of does benefit him at the bottom of the order. It seems like every time they would move him up, it doesn't work. It's like you want to move Michael Harris up. He's super talented, but it's like he still kind of hits really well for a ninth hitter in the lineup. So there is some Michael Harris stuff to that, but I don't know. I kind of wonder if Tony does need to kind of move around some guys if Dean Curley kind of, because he can't go 0 for 4 or for 5 in some key SEC games at the top of the order. And that just wasn't on the docket for SEMO at all last year. Yeah. And I don't know, like, it's unbelievable. Like, SEMO's top 15 draft pick. Like, it's not fair to put those kind of expectations on Dean, but I do think it's at least worth talking about of potentially moving Dean around and maybe putting Dean at 3 or 4 or something like that and moving Jay up to try. So Gavin Keelan, who is leading you in home runs, if Jay can get on or Jay can move around, like Gavin being the best person behind him, like I do kind of wonder if Jay Gavin might be something you fiddle with sooner rather than later.
I think so. I don't think right now. Again, we'll see what's in store this weekend. Alabama's a really good club. Alabama's pitched the baseball so well this year, which is, I don't want to say shocking, but like, I mean, there was serious questions surrounding that staff entering the year, and they've done a great job. I mean, they've had the most consistent pitching of anybody in the SEC to begin the season in terms of 1, 2, 3 starters. We'll see what happens this weekend. I still think it's a bit early for that. I think Dean Curley's a great hitter. He's going through it right now a little bit. I want my great hitters to hit more, and that's why typically you have your best hitter, hit 1, 2, something like that. So I'm not there yet. Also, as much as I want in my mind, like Jay Abernathy lead off, and that's going to happen in the future at some point. I mean, you brought up Michael. I love having him in the 9 hole because, again, it's like you flip your lineup over an at-bat sooner. Like, yeah, I was talking to Jack Foster at the game the other day. I'm like, I forgot what inning it was. Tennessee was down 4-2. Might have been the 4th or 5th inning or whatever, and Abernathy led off. He got on base. I turned to him. I said, "Okay, Tennessee's going to take the lead this inning because you got Abernathy on, no outs. It's like your leadoff guys out there. Then the lineup card flips over to Dean and Gavin. It just makes so much sense. So, I love seeing him in that 9 hole. But yeah, I mean, eventually he's going to hit leadoff, whether it's this year, whether it's next year. He's just too good. He hits the field. He hits the opposite direction so well. I love the way he's just not afraid in the box. I mean, he gives professional at bats, and it looks really, really good. And then something else you could maybe toy with a little bit is just flipping Dean Curley and Gavin Keelan. I think Gavin would be fine in the leadoff spot. Obviously, the power numbers have been there this year, and that's all great. I mean, truly, you're only leading off one time in the game. The rest of the time, you could be hitting second or third in the order. So that whole thing's kind of overblown in my opinion. But he's just seeing the ball well. His OBP is through the roof. His slugging percentage is through the roof. So I wouldn't mind Gavin Keelan hitting leadoff. But more than anything for Dean, he's got to take some more pitches. Like, he swings at the first pitch every time. And as a leadoff guy, as a, bottom of the first inning, like, let's let your dugout see some pitches here, man. Like, SEMO was so good about being selective and waiting on all that. And if we can get Dean Curley to not swing at the first pitch, I think we'd be on our way a little bit. But he's much better than the way he's been hitting here of late. So we'll see what this weekend has, maybe next weekend, and then we can talk about it some more. I think it's a bit too early, but sooner or later, Jay Abernathy's going to be at the top of the order, whether it's this year or next year.
The other freshman that has really come on and has just forced his way, he's kind of been, speaking of Dean Curley, he's been this year's Dean Curley, is Manny Marin, where Dean was not in the cards to start right away last year, and circumstances led to Dean getting an opportunity, and to Dean's credit, he ran with it. And he was like, nope, this is my job, and I'm not giving it back for the rest of the year. And he became an everyday shortstop. Manny's kind of done that at third, where Manny's like, I'm going to hit, and I'm going to be great defensively, and you're not taking me out of the lineup. Like, I am now going to play every weekend series. And I think it's just kind of overlooked, is that Manny Marin, who is unfortunately, I think, a 2-year guy at Tennessee because of his birthday. So you wish all these guys, like Levi and Jay and Manny and all, like, they're all 3-year, but he's a 2-year guy. So he has taken the reins here, Eric. But what has been the most impressive part of Manny Marin settling in at third and also hitting for Tennessee pretty strong to this point?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the surprise, if there is one, would be hitting. I knew he could swing the bat a little bit, but I mean, again, we're going to the second weekend of SEC play. We're over 20 games into the season, so it's enough of a sample size, but it's still just about a third of the way through. I mean, he's hitting 400. Dude's just hitting, right? And he's flashed some power a little bit, couple home runs in big spots, homered in Houston in a big league park, and I just think that he's doubled 5 times. That's tied for second on the team. Like, he just sees the ball really well, puts good swings on it, can go the opposite direction as well. He's been selective. He's walked almost as many times as he struck out as a young guy, so I kind of look at that parameter there. But the glove has not surprised me at all. I mean, I knew from day one they can put him anywhere in the infield and he was going to be fine. That's why I think this week we'll have to pay attention to Gavin Keelan's health. If he's not able to play second base, you have so many options, but Manny at second base would be a big one as well. He can play second, he can play short, he can play first. He played a little bit of first. He's played, I think, in the game maybe twice this year first. In fall or in spring, in preseason camp, he was playing a little bit of right field. I mean, the dude is just a wizard with the glove out there, and it's so much fun watching him. Watching him and Ariel on the same side of the infield. Whoo! That is just not even fair defensively. So I've been really impressed with him. And you're right, I love that comparison. He's kind of like this year's Dean Curley. It's like nobody was really talking about him. Dean got that opportunity, and then he just never left. And that's 100% Manny Marin. Manny Marin's that dude, and I'm excited to see how good he can turn into.
Absolutely. Switching gears here a little bit. Some Tennessee football, Eric Cain. This is something that is just every day. It's like my wife's like, what are we talking about? And I'm like, mesh? Is Tennessee adding mesh to the wide receiver concepts here? Are we going to see some mesh? Are you about to learn Wake Forest, buddy, here in Knoxville, Tennessee, Eric Cain? I mean, what do you think? Because that's where I'm like with the new potential route trees that Tennessee might be unleashing this fall. It does feel like there's going to be some changes to this offense. It does feel like it's not going to look like what we saw. Like the 12 personnel that I'm going to get to here in a second is probably going to be back. But what do you think we're going to see? Do you think it's mesh concepts? Do you think we see more of that? Do you think we see just more of a pro style look than we've seen in recent years as a whole with these receivers and the circumstances here at Tennessee? And then what would you like? Like if you were offensive coordinator Eric Cain, based on your preferences, what would you like to see the wrinkles be changed in the passing game?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to see some mesh concepts, in my opinion. I mean, nobody's told me this, but I mean, I think there's going to be some wrinkles. I think they're going to make some adjustments. Why? Because the last 2 years, your passing game has not been where it needs to be. Okay, I mean, it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
You also bring in Seth Littrell, who is coordinated offenses at a big level. He's a head coach in North Texas. He's been around the block. He knows what he's doing. He's going to come in there. He's going to have an imprint on this. Him and Joey Halsley, Josh Heupel, Kelsey Pope, and they're going to make some new wrinkles. This is still going to be Heupel's offense. So I don't think you're going to see more of a pro style or anything like that. But I do think you're going to see some tweaks. I think you're going to see some underneath routes because this offense relies on the post, the slants, the digs. There's no drags. There's no mesh. There's no hitches. There's no squirrel routes. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a receiver. There's no 10 and in. I mean, there's nothing underneath. And as a once upon a time, a long time ago linebacker, it's the underneath stuff kills you because you see something coming across your face and you want to go bam and smack it right there. But then they'll just throw it over the top, right? I mean, like that, it really puts the second layer defender in conflict. And there's not been enough of that, in my opinion, right? So if you do a drag right in front of the LBs, you roll that dig behind them, open all day, unless you have a safety that presses down. So I think there's going to be some tweaks and all that, and I'm hopeful of it. If I was the OC, and I'm intrigued to see if there's going to be some underneath stuff and kind of what that looks like, will it be enough to move those splits in? Tennessee's got the widest splits in college football. I feel like Josh Heupel's thought that they were paramount to running the football, and Tennessee's running the football well. Okay, I mean, if that is the reason why, mission accomplished, because Tennessee's run the football well every year under him. They ran the football almost as well as the Tennessee team has ever done it in program history last year. Like, so it's been good. But are you going to move the splits down at all? I'm curious to see if they toy with that at all and what that looks like. I talked about it last year. I was like, you got a young quarterback, you got an offensive line that can't protect him. Move that guy in. I mean, it's like you're throwing 30 yards to the right and 2 yards downfield. Move him inside, right? And so I'm intrigued to see what that kind of looks like. So I think there'll be some tweaks. I still think this will look like a Josh Heupel offense, but if you're not evolving, you're not growing. And I think this offense needs to grow significantly because there's been 2 years of it just not looking the way it needs to in terms of explosives.
I think you hit the nail on the head, especially with the underneath stuff. Braylon Staley, it feels like I was talking to Bull from Blue Chip Breakdown of like his comparison. I think with Cedric Wilson, and he's someone that I just feel like to maximize Braylon. And then let me also throw, I mean, we've talked about this, Boo Carter. If he's going to get snaps, Boo Carter being a problem in the middle of the field and making linebackers have to try and deal with Boo Carter. That's
it
what
can be
you
as
want.
simple as this: put Boo in the slot, let him run a 2-yard drag, literally just toss it to him and just let him work. Let it be a little pinball.
Don't make it overcomplicated. Don't overcomplicate this.
That's what a punt return is, right? Give him the football, a short amount of space, a lot of defenders, see what he does. That it can be as simple as that. Go on, sorry.
No, I mean, that's like, I think that's what you have to do. And I think that's why I think it's real. So I think the people who are kind of raising an eyebrow, the fans who are a little skeptical after 4 years, were like, all right, we've heard about these, like, make adjustments. And like, are we sure that he's going to do that? And I'm like, it seems to me there's just too much smoke. When there's this much smoke, there's fire. And there's just a lot of smoke that there's going to be new wrinkles and things are going to look a little bit, it doesn't, like you said, it's still Heupel's offense. It's not going to be a drastic change. But I do think with their personnel, with the struggles they've had the last 2 years, like you said, with Seth Luttrell in the building now, things are going to look a little different. Don't sell Landry Jones short here, Eric Cain. He's also back in the building here.
Yeah, I mean, getting the whole band back together.
But all that being said, I think it just would be silly not to maximize Braylon and Boo and underneath stuff and to not add mesh-like concepts. Like, I think with the personnel they have right now, I think it just seems like a no-brainer. But I do kind of wonder, and you brought this up, there is a give and take there where if you do start moving guys away from those wide splits, what does that mean for the running game? Because you have thrived averaging 5 yards to carry on average for the last 4 years, in part because of these wide splits and light boxes. If you start moving these receivers in a little bit, like, that's a lot more pressure on these inexperienced running backs. Like, this is not Dylan Sampson back there. These are, it's going to be a rotation of guys, and I know a lot of people are, Deshaun Bishop just needs to stay healthy. Until, like, Deshaun Bishop's healthy for a full year, I just can't pencil him in as, like, someone you can count on at this point. I think he's good, but availability is just too important. And I look at Peyton Lewis, you look at Dwan Morris, who's apparently turning heads as a freshman. Like, we'll see if he plays. Star Thomas, you like receiving out of the backfield. That's something else that Tennessee hasn't really done a whole lot, throwing passes to running backs out of the backfield. Maybe that's something Star Thomas feeds on. But if you move guys inside, that puts more pressure on this offensive line that's going to have 3 new interior starters. And Wendell Moy, Sam Pendleton, we're expecting as the transfers, and then potentially William Satterwhite. It's more pressure on them. Like, you're not going to have as light of boxes. You're going to have to, like, I'm not saying it's been easy for Tennessee offensive linemen to clear pathways for running backs to scamper on, but it has been easier to run up the middle because you've had lighter boxes. And that's what Tennessee, generally speaking, does. Like, they're running right up the gut. And if you're changing that a little bit, I would be curious to see what that looks like for the running game, because that will have to be something that is affected by it, right?
Yeah, and I mean, in my opinion, you can't just bring the guy in on a short split on this play, then widen it back out. Because I mean, everybody's going to catch that on tape and everything. Yes. Now, if you're in the red zone or something and you want to pull it out of your back pocket, like Chris Brazzell flipping with Chaz Nimrod last year, putting him in the slot. Yeah. Say you add that and him coming in a little bit or something, you score a touchdown. Okay, now everybody's got that on tape now, but I mean, you had it in your back pocket that you ran that one play, you scored. But it's not like you can just pick and choose what splits you want every single snap. You can, but you can't be consistent with that. So it'll be interesting. I mean, at the end of the day, I think offensive linemen just gotta do what they do, and that's go and put a hat on a hat and move the line of scrimmage. And you've got all these other teams with their offensive lines that are doing that across the country. And not that Tennessee's offensive line the last couple of years couldn't do that with normal splits. I think they certainly could. But to your point, it definitely helped them. I mean, with some lighter boxes, getting that defensive back out, putting that linebacker out in space, all that and more. So I don't know. It's going to be intriguing, but you hope with the veteran guards you brought in, with a Lance Hurd who will be healthy in another year older, with the David Sanders that has all the potential in the world. I mean, you hope that these guys, the way you've been recruiting and developing, that these guys can go out there and get it done, whatever's asked of them. So we'll see what happens. It will be interesting, though, because, again, like you can't just pick and choose. You got to find a split and be happy with it. So is that bringing it in a little bit and running there from a base? Is it staying out wide and, just saying, screw it, let's do what we've been doing? I don't know. We'll have to see. We didn't get a whole lot of looks at that in spring. Maybe we will in the orange and white game to see if it's any different, but I'll be looking for that.
The other way to avoid the issues there, tempo. Like if your tempo's strong and the offense is humming and you switch up the splits, like it's like you don't want to deal with like defense get set, but it will be harder for them to recognize, oh, they're inside, they're gonna run the ball, or you know what I mean? Like if your tempo is humming and defenses aren't able to sub and get set so that when you do change up where wide receivers are with their splits, that is a way around it. Like that is the way when you're moving. Like in the red zone, you obviously can't do this and it'll get tighter. But the hope is you don't have to be in the red zone as much. Like the hope is you're more like 2022 where you're not having to play in the red zone as much because you have so many big, long, explosive touchdown plays. So, I mean, that is another part of it. It's like if tempo's back, then you don't have to worry as much about just walking up to the line and like, oh, they just look over and they're like, okay, here they are. They're in their wide splits. They're running the ball. I think that is another way around it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, tempo, they still ran an offense with tempo last year, but I mean, they slowed it down considerably, and they wanted to rely on defense last year running the football. And you know what? Like, people that upsets, you made it to the college football playoff. You won 10 regular season games. Like, I'm sorry. Go find joy in life. It's like, what more do you want? This team just won. And what do coaches do? What do teams do? They evolve. They adapt. Okay, they go to their strengths. And last year, that was Tennessee's strengths. Now, is that Tennessee's identity forever? I don't think so. Is that Josh Heupel's identity? No, it never has been. I want to see that tempo return for sure. And I want to see a good defense on the other end of it still. And as you continue to recruit, develop, and get the caliber of players that you want in here and stack good class on top of good class on top of good class, I think you can have that perfect marriage. And, entering year 5, I think you're starting to be there, right? You lost a lot of players last year, like wide receivers and all that, and you lost some key defenders. But guys that are replacing them, I think are going to be just as fine, if not better, one day. I mean, I truly do. Like, I think Squirrel White was a really, really productive, nice player here. I think Tennessee can certainly replace his production next year, and that's no disrespect to Squirrel White. I hope he succeeds at Florida State. I think Tennessee's going to be fine in the slot. Dante Thornton's going to be hard to replace. Big time, but he was on the field for like 30% of the snaps anyway, so it's like you were trying to replace him to begin with every single time last year. Brew McCoy, Warrior, I wish he was still playing and everything, but man, it just felt like his injuries just continued to bog him down throughout his Tennessee career. Or Darius Jackson, Travis Smith, Chris Brazel, hopefully take that step. Mike Matthews, I mean, these guys physically, I think, can make up for that. So, again, long way of saying all that returns. Get back to that tempo. Get back to who you are, and you're right. I mean, you're putting defenses in a bind. You can get by with some shorter splits. Just kind of get back to your identity, and that's been an up-tempo football team, and I think Tennessee has looked the best when it's an up-tempo football team offensively. And last year, even though you ran the football so well, I thought you looked lost at times when you slew it down.
I wonder if they're able to bring the tempo back just because you're going to have so many new stars in the offensive line where it's like you talk about Lance Hurd, the learning curve and like what kind of shape he was in to start the year. And he got better as the season went on. But like Tennessee's got Georgia in week 3. Tennessee's got Syracuse right away. Like I mean, they'll be double-digit favorites against Syracuse, but I mean, Syracuse was a team that won 10 regular season or 10 games total last year. So, yeah. I mean, Fran Brown's a good coach. I mean, they don't have Kyle McCord, so that scares me less here, breaking in a new quarterback, Riley Collins, the LSU transfer. But I don't know. I think that is something else that I'm kind of wondering about is just what does the tempo look like when you have 4 new starters on the offensive line? We were talking about the interior, but like new center, like we saw the difference. Like we love Ollie Lane here, but like that was a difference in Florida. Like Ollie being thrust into that role for the first time. And that the environment's not going to be the same in Syracuse or Georgia at home, but the tempo and stuff has to, like, I wonder how much of the speed of what Heupel and company want to do out of the gate is a little bit different this year because they have two big games, one neutral site right out of the gate against Syracuse, and then Georgia at home, which might decide whether or not you're a CFP team because you need to win that game. You've lost one home game in the last 3 years, and it was against Georgia 2 years ago. And if you win that game, you're probably in the playoff because then you can lose Bama and Florida and win, and you'll be favored in every other game and be able to get in. But where are those offensive linemen at? How ready are they for that Georgia defensive line that you have not scored against in the second half of the last 2 years? So I don't know. I do kind of wonder where they're at because last year they only had to worry about breaking in Lance Hurd at left tackle. This year you're starting 4 new guys. Like, are they going to be able to handle tempo? Are they going to be in shape enough to deal with that kind of speed and everything else that Tennessee wants to do? I don't know.
It's a really good question. Yeah, I mean, 4 different offensive linemen and a new center. You mentioned Ollie Lane. I mean, Jerome Carvin, when he had to play center in 2021, he did a fine job, and that was a much slower offense than when it was with Cooper Mays. So for the first time in the history of Josh Heupel being Tennessee's head coach, you are looking at a different center one for your team, QB1, center one. And what's that look like? I think it's important for these guys to practice in fall camp. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a trainer. I'm not a Division I football coach. There's so much that I don't know and I don't understand. But I think a big reason why there was guys out of shape is because guys didn't practice last year. Like, hello?
We're talking about practice, not a game. Not a game.
Practice. Like, get out there and practice, man. And I mean, at some point, like, it's like, oh, you're going to play? Okay, get in here. You're going this rep a team here. You're going this rep 11 on 11. I mean, that's just my whole thing. It's like, everybody's like, oh, Lance Hurd's so out of shape. It's like, well, duh. He didn't practice in August hardly at all. So I don't know. I'm going off on a little tangent here. I apologize. But that stuff frustrates me. So these guys have got to get in there and practice the month of August. And we'll see what that tempo looks like. But you're exactly right. 4 new offensive linemen, a new center. Maybe it's a work in progress. Maybe you're not as fast as you're probably not. Usually you're fast to begin and then you slow it down as the year goes on. Mm-hmm. Maybe this is flipped because you got all that newness up front. Maybe you're at a decent pace to begin, but it's only going to get faster as the year goes along. I can see that happening.
Final thing, we'll get you out of here, Eric Cain. Mike Matthews. Like, we're looking in our crystal ball. Biletnikoff finalist. Do you see it for him this year?
No.
Okay.
I mean, that's no disrespect to him at all, but I've got to see this offense get back to where it was in terms of the explosives before I think anybody, Nico Heisman finalist, Matthews, Biletnikoff, I mean, anybody. I've got to see this offense thrive in those explosive plays. And so I'm going to say no, but that does not mean I don't think Mike Matthews can be a good player. I think he's going to be the leading receiver. I think his speed has never been an issue. His physicality has been his strength. I'm ready to see that combination kind of come full circle, and let's see him kind of utilize those, in a given game this year. So I'm excited to see what he looks like. I'm also excited to see Chris Brazzell because I truly do believe. I mean, there's only one way, one way, and it's up for him. From last year, I think being here another year, excelling in the practicing in the system and all that, it's only going to help him, just like it helped Dante Thornton. So I think the offense, the passing game will be better because I think Nico's going to be a lot better as well. But I'm going to hold off on the Biletnikoff for Mike Matthews right now. Doesn't mean I don't think he'll be a good player, but I'm going to hold off on
that. I think that's fair. Here's what I'll say. I think it's possible. I think he's going to get a bunch of targets. I think my gut is he is going to be used how he's going to have the relationship to Nico that Hendon had to Cedric Tillman.
Yeah.
I think he's going to get targeted a bunch. Like, I think he's going to get the option. Like, so if he does what he needs to do with these targets and this responsibility that he's going to have this year, he can absolutely be a Biletnikoff finalist because Tennessee doesn't have options. Like, you talk about Brazzell. Like, Brazzell, I want, like, poor man's Dante Thornton. Like, I will live with that. Like, with more snaps because I don't have the bodies. Like, just more snaps than Dante gave you last year for Chris Brazzell. But, like, if you just have a couple games where you flip the script, like the Vanderbilt game, like Dante Thornton bailed you out. If Chris Brazzell just has a couple games where he has 2 touchdowns on like 5 catches for 110 yards, and then he disappears for a couple weeks. You're like, all right, that's fine. Like that is what it is. Just give us something every couple games, or every 3 to 4, like on average, like every 3 to 4 games, like an Igor Milicic thing. He's the Olivier Cromwell, where it's just like every now and then we just need you to like help out the regulars.
It's bad, man. Like, because I think he's got a whole lot of talent, but there's only 2, and maybe this is unfair. There's probably more, but there's only 2 plays that come off on the top of my head right now when I think of Chris Bradsell last year. Number 1, the touchdown against Alabama. Yep. That was big. Number 2, wasn't even a touchdown. It was a massive third down, and Tennessee was down 14-0 in the first quarter at Vanderbilt. Maybe they had already scored their first touchdown, but it was a massive third down. It was like 3rd and 10 or whatever, and it was a dig, and he came back like in between 2 defenders, went up and caught it and got hammered. Held on the football. Tennessee got a first down and went ahead and scored. Like, those are the only 2 plays I can remember from Bradsell. So to your point, I mean, yeah, he's got to turn it on a little bit, and it would be unrealistic because it's a different skill set. I mean, Dante Thornton was an absolute burner. Like, not that Bradsell's not fast, but Thornton was a burner. It's a bit of a different skill set. But if you can give you more snaps but half the production, yeah, sign me up. I'll take that too.
I mean, you look at it. Last year was Travis Hunter, McMillan from Arizona, Nick Nash from San Jose State were the 3 finalists. It's kind of surprising that no Ohio State receiver was a finalist, but I don't know. I think Matthews is going to get the Cedric Tillman look, is my gut. I think you're going to see in Syracuse, if they spam the Mike Matthews button against Syracuse and Mercedes-Benz, where I'll be in the building for him. Excited for that. A reason to go back home to Atlanta for that game. But I do think you're going to see, we're going to do a pod, Eric Cain, that week after and be like, oh, did you look at the targets by Mike Matthews? Mike Matthews has 17 targets in the Syracuse game because they have they just keep spamming it. Like, they're just throwing to Mike. And he's such a good, go ball guy. Like, that's the thing is he's not as big as Cedric, but he's bigger than you think. And he plays above his size, where he mossed a guy in spring practice. He had that big up and over catch in the red zone against Kent State, I want to say. One of the best catches of the year. Like, he has that go ball potential, and is someone that I don't think is going to shy away from those kind of targets. And Tennessee hasn't had somebody like Cedric Tillman in a while. And I just think that's the relationship he's going to have with Nico. Nico is going to trust him and go at him a bunch.
I'm down to have that podcast, because that means Tennessee probably found some explosive plays in Tennessee. Yeah. I'll never forget sitting up there in that press box at Acrisure Stadium, the old Heinz Field, and
we're calling it Heinz Field. We're not
damn, how many times has he thrown it at Cedric Tillman? I looked down and I was like, 21 times. What? Like, he had like I want to say 13 or 14 receptions, 21 targets. Like, Jalen Hyatt had 13 targets in that game too. He only had 6 receptions, but it's like, man, they just threw it and threw it and threw it and threw it. And I remember Golish, we spoke to him a couple days after that, like inside the facility when he was walking in and out, and like, what is up with going to Tillman so much? He's like, that's our guy. I know for a fact he can go win us a game. We're going to go back to our guy repeatedly. Go back to our guy. That's Hendon's guy. That's our guy. And I was like, okay, I get it. So.
He's never gotten what if. Like, if he doesn't get hurt, like, what does that look like on that stupid? What's in that Kent State? Was that Akron?
It was Akron
game. Would have been nice to have him fully healthy for the Georgia game.
Yeah, it's not funny, but it's interesting because, like, Ramel Keaton balled out. Like, Ramel Keaton came in and he straight up balled out. And so, like, good for Keaton. But yeah, like, what could have been for Cedric Tillman, because he was never healthy enough the rest of the way, and it was unfortunate. But boy, did he make him some money here at Tennessee. Known as nothing but a blocking wide receiver for all the Pruitt years, and then in 2021, it's like, oh wow, look at this guy. Oh, that's a legit NFL prospect. Okay, and then of course we know what he's doing in the NFL now. So,
Eric Cain, what can the good folks check out from you and the team over at Locked On Vols and Volquest.com this week?
Yeah, just so much going on right now. Tennessee in the NCAA tournaments, Tennessee baseball and SEC play. Got Tennessee spring practice. They're going to be back on the practice field on Tuesday morning. So we're talking about it all. We're talking to some great people who are, inside sources as well. I'm at practice too. So all that and more conversation over on Locked On Vols, and of course every single day on the Volquest.com. We've got a lot going on right now. It's one of the best sports months of the year, no doubt about it, the month of March.
Go subscribe, Locked On Vols and Volquest today if you're not already. Eric, keep up the good work, my friend, and I'll talk to you again very soon.
Chase, thanks so much, man.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.